Hello and welcome to LIVWHU Focus. It is pre-match build-up show time as Liverpool return to Premier League action with another home fixture this weekend. This time we're facing off against David Moyes' buoyant West Ham side at Anfield on Saturday at 5:30, live on Sky Sports if you're watching in the UK. Thankfully, there's no need for all the box office nonsense this weekend, so we don't have to discuss that in much detail. So we can get on to the match itself, and I think because of the fact that West Ham are, as I said, buoyant at the moment, this game is perhaps a little bit tougher than we expected. I know before the Sheffield United fixture, I kind of pinpointed these three games, the Sheffield game and the West Ham game with the Midtjylland game in the middle, as an opportunity for Liverpool to rotate a little bit, given obviously the congested fixture schedule and the very difficult fixtures we had either side. We started off with the Derby and then the Ajax game right after the international break, and then before the next one we will have to go to Atalanta to play them in the Champions League, and then we've got an absolutely massive fixture away to Man City. So this kind of felt like a moment where the team could take a little bit of a breather, we could rotate a little bit more and give players the rest that they obviously need in this very, very difficult season. Of course, it hasn't quite transpired that way. Injuries have meant that our squad has been a bit more depleted than we would have liked, and that's kind of dampened our ambitions in terms of rotating and giving players rest, and also the fact that West Ham are a slightly different prospect to what I think we all thought they were going to be. They did of course get that fantastic result against Man City last time out last weekend, and of course we are incredibly grateful for that, but it does mean that they are coming into Anfield on a little bit of a high, and hopefully obviously David Moyes has an utterly atrocious record in our stadium. He has never ever won a game at Anfield despite playing, I can't even remember the number to be honest, I'm pretty sure it's over 20 matches at Liverpool's home ground now, and he has yet to come away with any more than a point, which is, you know, the kind of stat that is getting so ridiculous. You do kind of think surely the law of averages will balance it out and he'll get a result at some point, but at the same time there does just seem to be that mental block where he comes to this stadium and he doesn't really know what to do, and his teams often play within themselves as a result. I'll come on a little bit more onto later on in the video exactly how I think West Ham are going to set up, but a Moyes team at Anfield tends to be, you know, it retreats into its shell, it plays very defensively, they don't really show much attacking ambition, and as a result, even though they are defending very, very resolutely, because they just do that and nothing else, they tend to get broken down eventually, and Liverpool tend to come away with the result. But what I will say before this game as well is that we probably shouldn't expect fireworks of any kinds, to be honest, because the nature of the beast now seems to be that we are going to see a lot of 2-0s, 1-0s, 2-1s, results like that, because that is the primary way that Liverpool are going to be able to get wins at the moment, with the depletion that's occurred within the squad due to injury and the fact that the players don't really get as much rest and they therefore can't quite play full throttle all the time. We're not going to see this heavy metal football that we've become accustomed to under Jurgen Klopp. What we are going to see is something that has emerged over the last couple of years with this current Liverpool side, and that is relatively impeccable game management. This team knows how to go out and win a game 2-0. We saw it quite a lot last season for a team that was just an unstoppable winning machine for the vast majority of the campaign. Liverpool didn't actually put teams to sleep in the manner that Man City do a lot of the time. We didn't see too many 4-0s or 5-0s or any kind of ridiculous scoreline. We just saw a very constant conveyor belt of 2-0s and 1-0s and 2-1s. As I said, you know, the 2-1 home win almost became a little bit of a cliche as we got to the halfway stage of the campaign. It seemed to be happening that often for Liverpool, and it happened quite a lot away from home as well. So I think given the situation with injuries and with the lack of rest players going to get, that's something that's going to be happening a lot. That's why I was pleased with the 2-0 against Midtjylland. I was pleased with the 2-1 against Sheffield United and the 1-0 against Ajax, even though in isolation those three games weren't very entertaining to watch. They weren't enjoyable as Liverpool fans, really, if we're honest. Obviously the goals are great, the final whistle and the sign that 3 points is secured is great, but the actual 90-minute experience, you're not watching Liverpool at their absolute best, and I'm sure as a neutral it's torrid viewing, because at the end of the day Liverpool haven't shown up to entertain or to impress or to blow teams away. Liverpool have shown up to win the football match, and what is very, very positive is that we seem to know how to do that. Like I said, the last three games we have ground results out, whether we've been good or whether we've been bad or whether generally we've just been somewhere in the middle. We have found ways to get what we actually came for, and hopefully that will continue with the West Ham game this weekend. So as for team news going into the game, Jurgen Klopp did of course have his press conference today, and he confirmed that Thiago and Keita are progressing well, but there seemed to be no guarantee of when they would return to the side. Thiago is obviously the one that everyone's very, very excited to see, simply because we haven't seen much of him so far in a Liverpool shirt. We've seen obviously the 90 minutes of the Merseyside derby where he was fantastic. We've seen the 45 minutes even in the second half at Stamford Bridge where he just run the show, and we are of course foaming at the mouth to see more of Thiago in a Liverpool shirt. Whether we will see him tomorrow remains to be seen, because Jurgen Klopp said that it's going to come down to basically a late fitness test, and it seems that because the injury's not serious, you know, it's not a muscle problem or a break or anything like that, there isn't really much of a time scale on it. It is simply a matter of just taking it day by day, and one day when he says he's ready, and then he gets to come back into the side. That could be tomorrow, could be Atalanta. Hopefully it's at least happened by the time we play Man City in about a week's time, but fingers crossed we get to see him back at some point and some point soon. But it's impossible to tell at the moment, because like I said, it will come down to a late fitness test, and the same seems to be the case for Naby Keita, who's got not necessarily the same injury, but Jurgen Klopp seemed to hint it was a similar process of just going day by day, and listen, one day he gets to say, yeah, I'm absolutely fine. Obviously the positive sign with Thiago, and what kind of puts him slightly closer to contention than Naby Keita, is the fact that we are seeing him back in training. You know, he's clearly fit enough to be running around to do relatively intense work. It's just a matter of whether he was quite ready for a match situation, and as Jurgen Klopp said in his press conference, we are at all times at the moment exercising caution and playing it safe with player injuries. We're seeing a similar thing with Joel Matip at the moment, and I think that's why we probably will not be seeing him either on Saturday evening, and we'll be having a similar situation with Thiago. So unless he's absolutely definitely raring to go, and even then we maybe only see him from the bench, he's not going to play much of a part in the game tomorrow. Elsewhere, in terms of injuries and player availability, Billy Koumetio has returned from the issue that kept him out for, I can't quite describe how long, because obviously he's only really become not relevant but important to Liverpool's plans over the last couple of weeks or so with the injury to Virgil van Dijk, and since that happened he hasn't been available, but he has now returned to training, which is incredibly positive. Someone who looked great over pre-season. Jurgen Klopp clearly rates him and loves the guy. He's already given him the Billy the Kid nickname, which is now going around the squad, so he seems to want him to feel like part of the first team setup. The same goes for Nat Phillips as well, who is also fit and available for this weekend. So in Koumetio, Phillips, and of course Rhys Williams, who's been having a couple of appearances in the Liverpool first team shirt so far, Liverpool can do a little bit more of a horses for courses approach, and I think that's what Jurgen Klopp seemed to hint at in his press conference, that he was going to play players based on their strengths and allow them to flourish. You know, you don't want to put someone into a game where they're not quite suited to the opposition they're coming up against, and then you end up seeing the worst of them, and as a result they might go into their shell and it'll hinder their development. You want to put them into a game that is going to show the absolute best of them, that is going to really demonstrate their best qualities, and as a result improve them as players, improve their confidence, allow them to just get better and better and more confident in themselves playing in the first team. So I don't think there's necessarily like a one-size-fits-all option at the back at the moment. Thankfully Fabinho's injury is also less serious than we feared. It doesn't look like he's going to be certainly available for this game, and potentially not the next couple of games against Atalanta and Man City, but it does look like we'll have him back after the international break, which is a huge boost. But in the meantime, it doesn't look like Liverpool are just going to pick one player and say he deputises for Fabinho for every game. It looks like we're going to go very much on a tactical horses for courses basis and look at the opposition and say this is the person who is going to suit that situation the most. So with that in mind, here's how I think we're going to line up. I reckon it's obviously going to be Alisson Becker in goal. He is obviously hugely important to Liverpool at the moment with the injuries that we've had in the defence. A lot of the journalists who were in the ground for the game against Sheffield United said he was very vocal, especially once Rhys Williams gets onto the pitch against Midtjylland as well. Alisson talked him through the game, was always letting him know what was going on around him, keeping him informed, letting him know the things that he couldn't see, and therefore just, you know, helping the lad through the game and making sure that there's a unifying force, you know, that all the defenders are singing from the same hymn sheet as well. It's very much him who seems to be in charge at the moment. Of course, it was Virgil van Dijk. You'd hope that Joe Gomez steps up a little bit, and it remains to be seen whether he will take on the responsibilities of Virgil van Dijk. You know, there's some things that the goalie can't do. There are some things like the offside line and stuff like that that has to be the responsibility of generally one of the centre halves. So hopefully Joe Gomez is taking up that mantle. But in the meantime, it's great to have Alisson Becker as well. The centre-half pairing, I think, is going to be Joe Gomez and Rhys Williams, because the kid's playing well and it would be kind of harsh to take him out the side, and we reckon the game is going to be quite physical. We reckon it's going to test him in the air quite a lot, and Rhys Williams seems to have those capabilities. He's tall, he's strong, he's clearly a threat on set pieces as well. He seems to have done very well in that capacity for the under-23, so I don't think this is the kind of situation that's going to faze him. I think it's the one that, like I said, would bring out the best of him, that would allow him to show his absolute best qualities. So with that in mind, I think he has to start in this game. And of course, he's been doing very, very well so far, having been sort of thrust into the side over the last couple of weeks in various substitute appearances. And of course, it'd be great to see him get his first start in the Liverpool shirt in a Premier League match. So I think it's going to be Gomez and Williams. With that in mind, I think we have to keep the same fullbacks as well. This is an area that obviously we were hoping Liverpool would be able to rotate over the last couple of games. It would have been nice to see Samikas, who's obviously not been available for, I think it's injury reasons. Nico Williams as well, who's not been able to play simply because, you know, we need to rely on Trent Alexander-Arnold's playmaking ability because of the issues at centre-half. I think we need some stability at some point across the back line. So we've kind of sacrificed the fullbacks rest time, and hopefully as more and more players come back, as Fabinho and Matip return, and we can rotate a bit more with the centre-halves and we're a little bit more settled there, we can do more rotation with the fullbacks as well over the Christmas period to give them a bit of a rest. But for now, I think it's going to have to be Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andrew Robertson as your two fullbacks. Ahead of them, there are, I think, two midfielders that pick themselves. Jordan Henderson and Gini Van Alden basically have to go into the side. Elsewhere, I'm not going to pick Thiago because I think if he's subject to a very, very late fitness test, if we're going to err on the side of caution, it doesn't matter how good he feels, you wouldn't start him. You'd probably play him for about half an hour and then maybe look to that game against Atalanta to give him a few more minutes ahead of the Manchester City game. So I don't think he plays in this one. I reckon we go with Curtis Jones. I think obviously Milner has been doing a very, very good job in midfield over the last couple of games. Although if you ask me personally, I think he's starting to wane a little bit in terms of his... he just seems to be losing a yard or two of pace and distance and everything like that. He's still the absolute machine that James Milner will always be. You just have to look at, I think it was the stats from the Ajax game. He ran more than anyone else on the pitch in that match. So the guy's still got it, but I just feel like in terms of intensity, it's not quite there for James Milner in the same way it maybe was 4 or 5 years ago. And that's no slight on the guy. I'm not saying he's out of form. I'm just saying at the age of 34, in a system as intense as Jurgen Klopp's midfield, it's going to start to take its toll eventually, and it feels like maybe we're going to have to manage James Milner a little bit more, and we can't quite use him as the incredibly useful utility man that he has always been in the past for Liverpool. So I don't think he starts in this game, and I think we go with the energy, the creativity as well of Curtis Jones, and also if West Ham do want to go over the top, James Milner, not the biggest fella in the world. Curtis Jones, pretty tall, you know, still a youngster, and we haven't really seen him do too much in the air. He certainly doesn't seem to be like a Fabinho player in terms of, obviously he's never going to drop deep to cover the number 9 for West Ham or anything like that. But if the ball is in the air and it's going this way and that, and they're pumping it forward from goal kicks and stuff like that, then Curtis Jones will be a very, very good asset in the team. And like I said, I think his creativity will be very useful as well. And then in front of that midfield, I reckon it's going to be the usual suspects as the front three. I think Salah and Mane are pretty much nailed to start. I don't think Jota's going to play, despite the fact he's had some very, very good performances over the last couple of weeks and has of course chipped in with some very important goals. That does mean we've got him available as an option off the bench if we are looking for a goal. We know that we don't just have to rely on Divock Origi as we have tended to constantly do in the past. We can look at Diogo Jota now as someone who can come on, not just make the difference tactically, but can do the all-important thing of sticking the ball in the back of the net. And while I've been a bit critical of Firmino over the past couple of weeks on this channel, it's clear that he hasn't started the season as well as he would have liked. It's felt like over the last couple of games he's maybe getting a little bit more of his mojo back, and I think some of that is to do with the slight change to the formation, him playing in a number 10 role rather than as a false 9. Right now I've got him in as his usual false 9 position with Salah and Mane either side in a 4-3-3. I just think it'll be interesting to see how he performs, because he did get the goal against Sheffield United. He's looking a little bit more like his usual self, and you'd want to reward that by putting him back in the side. And listen, if he doesn't perform against West Ham, then you can obviously again take him out, put Minamino in, or put Diogo Jota in, and then you've got time to have a little bit more of a fiddle round both tactically and in terms of personnel ahead of that all-important game against Man City next weekend. So taking a quick look at West Ham then, obviously as I said at the top of the video, they're in a very, very good moment at the moment. It's a rather strange sentence, but you kind of catch my drift. They're doing very well. They've picked up some good results. The draw against Tottenham Hotspur is absolutely fantastic. The spirit they showed there, although if we're being perfectly honest, they didn't really start the game very well, and you could probably accuse Tottenham of letting them back into the match. They did very, very well to hang on to that point against Man City, although it's, again, very difficult to really work out what's going on with Manchester City at the moment, whether they are, you know, just quite simply stuck at the same level they were at last season. Obviously, last season they were not the Man City of the previous 2 seasons, and it feels like now maybe they're never going to get back to that level, certainly not under Pep Guardiola, and they may just be a 75 to 85% 5-point team, which is no bad thing, and that would generally win you leagues, but in the current climate, you do kind of have to push yourself a little bit further. But enough about Man City. The main point is, of course, West Ham. It's kind of hard to read into that result as well, because we don't know quite what kind of challenge Man City would have posed them, and whether or not Liverpool are going to test West Ham a little bit more. Of course, they played very well against Arsenal earlier on in the season, and very nearly got a draw out of that game before a late winner. Although, again, with Arsenal, who's to say what kind of form they're in at the moment? They seem to have good weeks and bad weeks, and sometimes they play well and bulldoze teams, and other times they make really, really hard work of it, and sometimes don't get the result they want. So it's a real test of where Liverpool are at compared to some of those other rivals. You know, obviously the Big Six is not the top six at the moment. The table is incredibly interesting, but we kind of compare ourselves to Man City, to Spurs, to Arsenal when we look at opponents and how they're going to set up. So you'd expect West Ham to set up in a similar way, and that means they probably will be defensive. You imagine they'd go long as well, especially with the problems that Liverpool do have in terms of personnel at the back at the moment. We have got a slightly shakier back line. I don't want to be too unfair on the lads, because Rhys Williams has done well and Joe Gomez has done well. And I think the real positive is we do have Alisson Becker in there. We saw him in the game against Midtjylland coming for a lot of crosses, and that's obviously going to be very important. If West Ham want to just pump the ball into the box and get it in the air and cause problems that way, then a goalkeeper is not afraid to confidently come off his line and claim the ball, and a back line that understands that and will accommodate that and will work with it is a very, very good thing. That was one of the problems with Adrian, was that he really didn't seem to like coming off his line, and it led to a lot of uncertainty in the box when crosses came in. So I do think they'll go for that approach. Antonio could miss out though, so they may have to slightly tinker with it. Although obviously the other option for them up top is Sebastian Haller, who Jurgen Klopp waxed lyrical about a little bit in his press conference today. Obviously, having seen him perform quite well in Germany for a couple of years before his transfer to West Ham. It hasn't quite clicked for him at West Ham, although it feels like very gradually he's finding the net a little bit more and more, although obviously now he's not had too much time in the side. But this game looks like the kind of one that would very much suit him. West Ham are probably going to play to his strengths. He likes the ball in the air. He likes to get physical with defenders. So at the end of the day, it's a very, very big test for our back line. Yet another one. They just come thick and fast at the moment. And this is the kind of game that could be the making of Rhys Williams. It feels like only a week ago I was talking about matches being the making of Joe Gomez in terms of taking on the mantle of leadership left behind by Virgil van Dijk, who's obviously missing out through injury. But Rhys Williams now has got a real chance to prove himself. Should he start? And of course, there's no guarantee that he will. Liverpool have got other options there. We could go with Nat Phillips, who's also strong and dominant in the air and has experience in those kind of games in the Bundesliga too, with his loan at Stuttgart. Billy Koumetio is no shrinking violet as well. The kid is big. So he's definitely going to be an asset for Liverpool in the air as well. So we've got options there, which is absolutely fantastic. I know there's the possibility of people kind of entertain the idea of Henderson or Wijnaldum at the back. I think maybe against Atalanta, when the ball's going to be on the floor a little bit more and it's a lot more about reading the game and coping with the intensity and the speed of play. But when it comes to the ball in the air, I think we've got to trust our academy lads, and I think Williams is going to get the nod. And listen, it might not go well. You know, you look back at lads like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's obviously a world-class talent and a hugely important player for Liverpool. You can look back to that game at Old Trafford about 2.5 years ago, where he just gets absolutely mullered for 90 minutes by Marcus Rashford, and he refers to that game as well. He knows that he had a tough time, and it's kind of acknowledged that that game, while it was a difficult moment for him, it was the making of him going forward. And Rhys Williams, he's a young kid as well, in a high pressure position, in high pressure situations, Premier League matches where the world is watching. At some point, it's probably going to go wrong for him. That might be this weekend. It might be Atalanta. God forbid it might be at the Etihad against Man City. That's going to happen. And obviously, one thing we've got to do is we can't lay into the kid. We can't just criticise him and give him pelters. We've got to acknowledge that that is something that's going to happen, and it's all part of his development. Hopefully it doesn't happen this weekend. Hopefully it happens in a scenario where Liverpool don't drop any points as a result. But like I said, this game is going to be difficult for him. They're probably going to target him as well. And to be honest, based on his current performances, I'd back him to come out the other side, all the better for it. And I'd back Liverpool to come out the other side with all 3 points. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. Let me know what you thought of the video down in the comments below. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to hit the like button down there as well. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel in the past. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter. And I'll be back tomorrow evening with the post-match reaction show after we've hopefully battered West Ham. Until then, bye for now.